was asked a couple of years ago by the poet Peter Sir to nominate a book that was particularly important for myself. I had no hesitation in going for the book New Poems 1973 by Thomas Kinsella, and as a matter of fact we've already heard a couple of poems from that book, and the poem I'd like to read is from that book. But it's probably worth remembering, I think, that 1973 was not only the year when this wonderful book was published, but it was also the year when there were various energies afoot in the larger world, such as Watergate, such as the signing of the Paris Accord, which gradually brought to an end the Vietnam War and began a sort of process of demoralization, I think, within the so-called American century. And perhaps more importantly, from an Irish point of view, from I suppose a humble Irish point of view, of a young person, a would-be practitioner of poetry like myself, about to graduate from an Irish university, the Arab-Israeli War at Yom Kippur, which, as many people will remember, had the effect of raising the oil prices all over the world and plunging this country, this small country, among many other countries, into a kind of depression that was to last for at least 20 years. That may seem irrelevant to Thomas Kinsella and his poems, but I don't think it is, because the book itself, for those who've read it, is kind of a split book, in that many of the poems are wonderful evocations of a locale, as almost as remembered through a childlike memory, the locale of West Dublin. But many others also take place in what I would consider to be the larger realm, perhaps a more universal realm, a realm of energies that were outside Ireland, and that I think a young poet would very much wish at that particular introverted point in Ireland to have tapped into. And certainly these poems spoke to this young poet at that time. This poem, it's a poem set in the American Middle West, and the season is autumn. And I think what's wonderful about it, apart from the extraordinary precision of Kinsella's language, and it's worth remembering that the great queen of precise language, Elizabeth Bishop, was at this time in Harvard University, very much, I think, being fated, and rightly so, for this sort of exactitude, this understated exactitude of language. Whereas here we have a poem written by an Irish poet in the United States at much the same time, where the precision is, if anything, almost superior. But more than that, there's a wonderful and terrifying undertone of what we might call planetary doom or apocalypse, seeping up through the language and the everydayness. And that planetary doom is something, I think, and this poem, that has become more and more real, not less and less real, as is the case with so many poems since it was written. So here it is. It's called Crab Orchard Sanctuary, Late October. The lake water lifted a little and fell, doped and dreamy in the late heat. The air at lung temperature, like the end of the world. A butterfly panted with dull scarlet wings on the mud by the reeds, the tracks of small animals softening along the edge. A child's footprints out too far. The car park was empty. Long threads of spider silk blew out softly from the tips of the trees. A big spider stopped on the warm gravel, sunlight charging the dark shell. A naked Indian stepped out onto the grass, silent and savage, faded, grew transparent, disappeared. A speedboat glistens slowly in the distance. A column of smoke climbed from the opposite shore. In the far inlets, clouds of geese flew about, quarrelling and settling in. That morning, 2 thin quails appeared in our garden, stepping one by one with piping movements across the grass, feeding. I watched a long time until they rounded the corner of the house. A few grey wasps still floated about at the eaves. Crickets still chirruped in the grass, but in growing silence, last week's frosts. Now a few vacated bodies, locust wraiths, light as dry scale, began to drift on the driveway among the leaves. Stiff little fusily devil bodies. Hidden everywhere, a myriad leather seed cases lie in wait, nourishing curled worms of white fat, ugly in absolute certainty, piteous, threatening in every rustling sound, bushes worrying in the night breeze, dry leaves detaching and creeping. They will swarm again on suffocated nights with their endless hysterics and wither away again. Who will stand still then, listening to that woodpecker knocking, and watch the erratic jays and cardinals flashing blue and red among the branches and trunks? That bronze phantom pausing, and this stock still with glittering brain, withering away. It is an ending already. The road hot and empty, taken over by spiders and pairs of butterflies twirling about one another, and grasshoppers leap drifting over the gravel, birds darting, fluttering through the heat. What solitary step. A slow, hot glare out on the lake, spreading over the water.